just about see it there. You see the base right in the middle of your screen. See the flashing lights there, the bottom, and then right in the middle should be the Statue of Liberty, which is usually lighted right now. No word yet on whether or not this is a power failure, but we'll continue to update you on that. Of course, that iconic statue there, the lights are always on. Now I want to turn out to the White House, doubling down on President Trump's accusation that former President Barack Obama wiretapped Trump Tower during last year's campaign. And the press secretary, Sean Spicer, saying the president has absolutely no regrets about making the unsubstantiated claim. I want to bring in now CNN senior political commentator David Axelrod, a former senior advisor to President Obama, and historian John Meacham, the author of Destiny and Power. Thank you, gentlemen. Good evening to you. Let's see. David, I'm going to start with you. Tonight, multiple top Republicans say that they have seen no evidence that the former president, Barack Obama, wiretapped President Trump. Listen to this.
We don't have anything today that would send us in that direction, but that's not to say that we might not find something.
I don't know what the basis of his statement is, so I really can't comment on that.
Have you seen any evidence of that?
Mr. Leader, I wish Senator Gordon.
No, I haven't.
I have not. I mean, I have not seen that evidence. As you know, I think that a lot of that was maybe a little bit, the multiple tweets were perhaps a little bit strung together.
So, but the White House is not backing down from their claim that they want an investigation. An investigation based on what, though?
Yeah, well, look, I think both things can be true. I think they can have no regrets and there can be no evidence. And we've seen that before. Your panel mentioned earlier the comments he made over Twitter about the 3 to 5 million people who voted illegally. And at that time, the same pattern took place. The White House said, there's no evidence that it didn't happen. So someone ought to examine it, and this has been an ongoing thing with this president. He has no filter, and he gets on Twitter, and most of us have a thought box, and then we have thoughts that we express publicly. He has no filter, and he just goes right to, and if he's read a conspiracy theory, apparently that was the provocation here, he takes it right to Twitter if it suits his mood, and then it leaves everybody else scrambling. I would think, as a former White House staffer, that it would be the most miserable job on the planet right now to try and be a spokesperson for the president, because you have to justify the unjustifiable. It's very tough for the people on the Hill, Republicans who want his signature on their legislation, and therefore they want to play along. The Republicans are still supportive of him, their constituents. They want to play along, but it really strains credulity to have to answer these questions all the time. And I suspect that this is a pattern that's not going to change. And let me just finish by saying, Don, we're 1 week out from when the president gave what I thought was a very effective speech to the Congress, and one of the takeaway lines was, the time for trivial fights are over. And boy, does that seem like a distant memory, doesn't it?
Yeah. I had practically forgotten about it, considering what happened. John Meacham, I don't know if you were laughing. That laugh was out loud that you gave there. But I just want to the point that David just made, can we put up, these are the inauguration pictures. And we went back and forth about this, and everyone knew, everyone knew exactly what was happening here. The National Park Service released a series of photos. They show the crowds during the last 3 inaugurations in response to the Freedom of Information Act requests from various media outlets. The White House knew these photos would not back up their claims. Right. So the question is, there's no proof about wiretapping. There's no proof to the crowd size. Why lie?
I have a new theory, which, and I laughed because David was right, saying that, imagine having to defend this. It's just an amazing thing. It seems to me that President Trump is not actually speaking to us anymore. He's speaking, I think, to the 44 or so % of people who approve of his performance. By the way, Richard Nixon had slightly better numbers on the day in April of '73 when Bob Haldeman and John Ehrlichman resigned. And so for people who are charting this historically, that's kind of where the numbers are. I think that he's now, and perhaps always has been, simply speaking to his base. He's made...
But is that 44%, pardon the interruption, they believe when he tells mistruths? Are you saying that they believe that?
I think that enough of them do, or he wouldn't be doing it.
Okay.
I really do. I think that he puts this out there, and people who don't follow this as obsessively as the rest of us, who in other parts of their life are probably healthier, therefore. But I think it becomes part of a kind of catastrophic news environment where people believe that, well, oh, wait, didn't Obama wiretap him? We never saw that birth certificate. I mean, it's just these continual post-truth stories that at a certain point have a corrosive effect on the public trust.
Yeah.
And I think that for those of us who, and we were talking last Tuesday, those of us who think that he's trying to lead the whole country, it's like Lucy in the football. Every time we go, he pulls it away.
Yeah. Hey, David, I have something that's just speaking of, we were talking about the wiretapping thing. This is from the Wall Street Journal. I want to get your response to that. They're saying that the former president is livid, President Obama livid over the Trump allegations. He said, but he was livid. This is a quote from the Wall Street Journal. He was livid over the accusation that he bugged the Republican campaign offices, believing that Mr. Trump was questioning both the integrity of the office of the president and Mr. Obama himself. People familiar with his thinking said. What's your response to that?
Well, I don't have a response to it. Just knowing him as I do, I'm sure he was livid, and less livid about himself. I don't think anybody believes Barack Obama. I mean, it may be that John's right, that there's a core of President Trump's supporters who may believe it, but I think the broader public doesn't believe that. If anybody knows anything about how all of this works, it's impossible to believe this scenario. But there is, the point John makes is the most important one, and this has been my concern about this president. You know, elections come and go, and policies change, and you may not like the way the policies change, but that's the nature of democracy. But this constant drumbeat of attack against institutions, whether it's the former president, the courts, the media, sort of the fundamental pillars of our democracy, that has a potentially long-term corrosive effect that may, in his view, serve his short-term politics, but in the long term is very unhealthy for our country.
I don't think people... I think people may want to believe it, but I think any rationally thinking person cannot come to the conclusion that this is true, especially considering, John, President Trump's wiretapping accusation is not the only unsubstantiated claim that he is currently pushing. Look at today. This is what he tweeted today. He said 122 vicious prisoners released by the Obama administration from Gitmo have returned to the battlefield. Just another terrible decision. But if you look at the numbers, and if you look at the facts, 113 of the prisoners were released during President George W. Bush's administration. Yeah. So, can we believe what this president says?
No.
Why does he still have a phone for Twitter? But go on.
Well, no, we can't. And my point is that this is part of a concerted propagandistic effort that's anathema to the kind of data-based truth in our politics that has characterized us since the Philadelphia in the late 1780s. I mean, I really believe this. And I mean, you all may say that people don't believe this, but I think there's this snow machine that he turns on, and it complicates, it fills the air. I've been watching the captions on your network all day, and it's saying about wiretapping and Obama and Trump Tower. And I think it creates an ambient atmosphere of distrust. And I believe that insofar as there is a method to this madness, that's what the President of the United States is doing. Because guess what? How the hell did he get there but by creating an ambient sense of distrust about the very legitimacy of the birth and citizenship of the 44th President of the United States. It has worked before. And I think we're being naive if we think that somehow or another our reason-based, our analysis will make it go away.
Imagine that. He was rewarded for conspiracy theories and lying by,
yes.
becoming
Yes, he was.
president of
He is the president of the United States,
Yeah.
and he took out David was one of the main people on the planet who helped elect Barack Obama. And I would ask him, I mean, do you think that the birth certificate propaganda hurt the president and helped Trump?
Well, there's no doubt it was an impediment, and it stoked up the base, and it certainly helped in these midterm elections. I mean, President Obama won two very solid victories in his election and his re-election, and he retired with a very high approval rating, which I sometimes think is also bothers the incumbent when he looks at his own numbers. But clearly, it took up a lot of time. It created a lot of grit. It threw a lot of sand in the works, and I think that was the point. Look, Donald Trump is a marketer. He is a brander. He is a reader of audiences. He thinks this sells to his base, and it may sell to his base. The question is, how do you govern this way, and ultimately, where does it all lead? And I'm not sure he has a very good concept of that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Obamacare and who it actually affects. Some of the voters, many of the voters, people who voted for this president would be affected if Obamacare went away. We'll discuss that. We'll be right back.